Okay, just briefly
Yeah,
introduce Peter. I met Peter quite a few years ago.
quite a few years ago, yeah.
And we were trying to remember the other night where we first met and how at street level, where I used to be the director, how we ended up doing this massive exhibition of photography from the Baltic states, which was just after Estonia got its independence. All the Baltic states got their independence from Russia. And so it was a very significant moment in time. And then we remembered that there had been a conference in Durham in the north of England, and that Peter came over and gave a talk about photography from the Baltic states. And I was just like bowled over by how unusual and unique the work that was coming out of the Baltic states was, and it had never really been seen anywhere, like in the UK or Ireland. And I thought it would be brilliant to try and work on like curating a show. So we did this huge exhibition in an old church in Glasgow in 1993 and published a catalogue to go with it, which is still trotting around the world. And I think it had quite a big impact. And then, so
Yeah, it
that's when
was
it
in
started.
quite a few places
Yeah.
in England and
Yeah.
in Britain,
Yeah.
so-called Great Britain.
Yeah.
Yeah, like in Wolverhampton and York and
Yeah.
in London too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we also, as at the same time as we did the exhibition, we did, because just like with Artlink, that we think residencies are really important for knowledge exchange and just kind of widening the scope of the artists from the area. We brought artists from Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia over to Glasgow to spend a couple of months in residence there as well. So it was kind of a big project. And then Peter decided that he's been working for a long time teaching in the art college at Palace.
Yeah, that's the one.
And he wanted to come over on a kind of research trip. So we thought it'd be nice if we came to Donegal.
Yeah. Thank you. It's a long story, to put it short. Yeah, that was a successful exhibition, and it was like one of the best touring ones. It had like 6 venues around Britain, and then later we used the work or this constellation in other countries too. So just to come back, why we decided to do this exhibition, probably there is something similar between smaller nations like Irish and Estonian, and because we have also had different waves of emigration to the West, and also people getting into Siberian forced labor camps, and so it's quite violent actually. That's when I remember my first meetings with Russian boys. I remember the stones were flying across our heads, and it was like a war since the very beginning. That's why I start with this image, especially it's done during the current war with Ukraine, which is completely insane, because Russians and Ukrainians as nations are very much like interwoven historically, and I just can't understand. Is it only kind of military industries game and no more? And it will end up dramatically. When I came here, there were Russians who were leaving the country like everywhere, absolutely. It's a massive immigration, because people who want to do science or business or art, they don't want to stay in such kind of country with no future. That's probably, yeah. So one of my students, who is actually a part-time photography student, made this kind of huge panel, like a map for children in schools, where it's, dark place here, world without Russia, which is huge territory, 1/6 of the planet, as they declared some years ago. And to my mind, it works quite well without this big part of land, and I feel like, similar feelings. We want this to disappear, finish, or die, or whatsoever. It's too much already trouble. So I started my teaching career later than exhibition and curating, and when I was in my 30s, when you have physically a lot of power, you curate and you organize things and so forth. Then I went over to teaching, which is one of the few permanent works which is not commercial. I could go to work commercially too, but that's not my cup of tea really. And so we had a unit all of a sudden in Arts Academy called Faculty of Taste. Quite ironically, it was not printmaking, it was not painting, it was not sculpture or whatever. And so Faculty of Taste comes from Immanuel Kant philosophy, and my teacher, Thomas McEvely, who also comes from Ireland actually, and who was a New York art critic, he wrote about this in an ironic manner, how Kant separated the taste from other, human interests, and made it hermetic, and this is what we know as modernist art, art for art's own sake. So in 1990s we had this really challenging period of, I wouldn't say it's easy, but what topics shifted to foreground were necessarily geopolitical realities. How long would Estonia last as an independent country, being in between all those big neighbors such as Russia and Germany and, some others too. And I think people had so much to remember because it was all prohibited and illegal to make past memorable. And also all kinds of political things which Estonia was not very strong at, because the older generation didn't even hope that they could be political subjects, but they were so pressed or repressed that they lost hope for that. So I thought that these things should be brought onto the scene again and discussed and argued and whatsoever. So the catalogue is quite famous now. It's everywhere in the world. You can go to Strand Bookstore in New York and buy it, and or Australia or Japan. That's what we did with Marta together in 1993 for Street Level in Glasgow. A lovely, small and nicely designed catalogue. And the other one, 5 years later, we did Out of the Shadow for North Carolina in the United States. This is a little bit different work, but still the core is the same. And we started to do in the 1990s, where everything was possible, like in America in the 60s maybe. We did our own biennale. First was called Factory of History, or Fabrique d'Histoire in French, and the other one was Invasion. And we tried to, it included work from nearly 30 countries, I would say. Pressless. Big, nice, very well working organism. So we put everything there. And we showed that the invasion today is not necessarily military, but also through all kinds of missionaries and other clever tricks, like Chinese never shoot anybody, but they marry Russian women, for instance, and they rent the land already for a long time in Siberia, and they get into. Right. We have been in touch with many people, including this very famous British photographer, Martin Parr, for instance, who came over in the early 90s to Estonia and photographed the last days of the empire, so to speak. How people look like dull, they have no motivation, the shops are empty, but the spirit is sometimes very high at the same time. So I've been doing like several, 20 or more books actually. That's my doctoral thesis about here. It's called Photology. It's an integrated way of treating photography again, because in the 1990s everybody said that there's no such a thing as photography at all, but rather you have photography in discourses, photography in architecture, photography in biology or science, and photography as an art. So, and there's nothing common between. So I came from a semiotic department where there's all kinds of systems and structures of meaning are concerned, very, very much like, and we were dealing with that. And I took a system from Michel Foucault and Yuri Lotman and did put them together. So Lotman had, every cultural text has a task, whether to be a piece of memory, or functioning as a memory, communication and expression. And Foucault and Nietzsche told that there is a will to knowledge and will to power also. So I mixed those things together and I built up an integrated, hopefully working theory of what photography still, as a general, is, not depending where it is used outside of that, the bigger formation. So, of course, every country should have a history of its own photography, national photography. And I worked with this book also like 20, if not more, years. And finally, Ontology, which is the constellation of pictures, visual mostly, very short texts, and yeah. For instance, on the cover you can see the city that doesn't exist anymore because the Russians took it down, raised it down to zero. It's Eastern Estonian border, Narva, and the town hall. It's taken from town hall. It was very nice Barocco city, and we can look later from the internet how it looked like. Really very, very beautiful. So, European thing. Our colleague and friend Václav Macek in Bratislava, Slovakia, did put together a 6-tome book of history of European photography, where I did write Estonian parts, and on the cover of the first volume is an Estonian photographer, Johannes Pääsuke, from 1913 or something like that. It's not 14. And on the last one you can see Martin Parr's bored couples. So, 1990s was the period, or late 90s, where photography started to be included in international art histories as well. It's the other work I did with my friends and colleagues. Now, let us go back for a while to the common theme, how people get away from the country because of political reasons and military also. And we have like 70 or 80,000 people from the 1940s who just escaped towards the Western countries, including Sweden and later Canada and the United States and Australia even. Found some very good photography even in South African Republic and New Zealand. Okay, that's a typical way how people got away from Estonia to Sweden, which is 300 and something kilometers. Not so close, but not so far as well. So it was possible, it was thinkable to take a boat and go away. The Germans, what they did, just for fun probably, 16 refugees on the boat, and they just used torpedo and took it down, and sunk. Why? Nobody understands what kind of sadism that is. Yeah, that's an emblematic image by Erik Sover, who lived in Cincinnati, Ohio, during his last years, and who photographed all the way from Estonia through Poland and Germany and until he got into the United States. So here's the symbolic image of people rushing to the ferry, hoping to get away because the Russians were already coming in the 1944 to reoccupy Estonia. And you know, it's like no space, nobody looks at nobody, really. Everybody is like, you know, panicked. It's a traumatic experience. And the ship was bombed. Next day it sunk as well. So here's the typical migrant mother, Estonian version, you know. It's a typical way how mothers and children also took part on this exodus. And yeah, once more this image is very important to me. As for this man who photographed it, he was stuck into his childhood home. He didn't like this image very much. For him it was traumatic, for me it's very exotic. So he always preferred to show his old house at the countryside. So how the people were moving around Germany to displace people, camps, DP camps as they call them, was on the rooftops of trains. And then finally, after 5 years, somebody was, you know, invited to work in Canada. Canada had lack of workforce that time, Australia as well, and up to a certain extent America as well. So here, the family of Soveres, they went to New York, and that's a very typical way of first seeing the Statue of Liberty across the sea. Some books have been published on that period, 40s, 50s, when people stayed at those camps. There were screenings that if somebody was a policeman before, was sent back to Soviet Union and so forth. That's everybody were afraid of. The other case, which is even more Viking, I would say, Donald Koppel, who was serving in 3 armies by that time in the 1940s, Russian army, German army, and Estonian army. And finally he understood that this doesn't have any sense. They went to Sweden, they bought fishermen's boats of 13 meters, 13 meters. They they built the freshwater tanks on this boat and places where to keep food. And they went to Madeira Island, which is Portuguese, and it's located next to African coast. And they crossed Atlantic with this fisherman's boat within 29 days. So when I met him, he was an old man living in Florida, Miami. Would you do it again? He said, no. It was just, we didn't have any other chance. And thanks God there were no storms that period. And that's why they choose the longer way from Madeira to Florida, because waters are more calm than you go directly from here to Canada, for instance, or Boston, Detroit, places like that, New York. And that's why they had 2 men who could navigate, of course, otherwise you get lost. So, and the place where he was escaping from looked like that. That's the city, beautiful city of Barocco and Renaissance. Narva, eastern border. And the bombing was absurd because of there were no militaries in the city, there were no even civilians in the city. And that's why nobody understands why. What's the reason of just taking down an empty city, which is beautiful? You could, inhabit it or whatever. It's kind of savage thinking, really hard to understand. So now it looks like 1950s Khrushchev style of terrible Soviet city. Yeah, here we go. That's what human beings can do to other human beings. And that's very, very strange to my eyes. We did a book as a diploma work with one of our students. We did put together and did high quality printing with color separation, black and white stuff, but nice big size, 25 to 30 centimeters, with a very thick paper, like an artist book. And this all includes those moments. And now it's very easy to understand why this journey, this voyage was so important. 29 days. And thanks God, nothing happened, because there were boats that sunk too, sometimes. Some people went to South Africa, for instance. Some people went to Canada, most of them. And wherever it was possible to go. Okay, what have been happened if those guys were not escaping? Yeah. Here's my teacher, who was a 15 years child in 1945. And as a child, the Russian soldiers came to his home, and they started to pack the people and send them to the forced labor camps to Siberia. So he, as a child, as 15 years child, he was not very much like, he was afraid, but he understood that something very extraordinary is going on. And he did like 2 shots. One is still here, the other one he didn't know where it is. So my own grandfather, who was a teacher at the countryside, director of a small school, also was taken away by railway carriages, and that's his letter that he threw out from the railway carriage. Which is about that, don't worry, I have to go to Russia. When I reach the place, I will certainly write to you, and be happy, and don't panic, in a way. So, and one of my students has had the whole family for 10 years working in those camps, one of those camps, which was not closed, which was not a prison. These ones are prison. But you didn't have anywhere to go. It's like empty land for 1,000 kilometers, and no food. So, they were working there. So, and they photographed the whole thing, and she did a film. Again, later I can send you a link. It's called Positive. It uses the Samuel Beckett's Text for Nothing as a voiceover. And the music from the 50s, Sviridov's very Barocco, Stalinist Barocco music as well. It's very nice, still hanging in the TV archives. Very nice diploma work again. Here, this is the closed, like jail type of forced labor camps, and you have barbed wire and things like that. Okay, let's now leave that historical background, which is very strong to be remembered in the 1990s, of course, And one of my teachers, Peter Linnap, who was a conceptual artist, and he started his career like that. He made a journey for 100 kilometers, stopped at every number, so to speak, and made photographs. This total 100 photographs like that. And he did also another annoying work in a way, how to visualize the folk song. So he just traveled by car and took very casual photographs between two cities, and then he wrote the well-known words of the song, like one by one, on each photograph. He also did another nice work before becoming political artist. This is a early 20th century backgrounds from the photo studio and contemporary people in front of them. It's like a comparison of things. But now, the major work, 55 years later, compares sceneries and objects and even sometimes even people in the year of 1937 and then later 1987 or 92. He changed the date later. So it's called comparative photography, where you can have nearly the same composition. The location is the same, but you can observe what kind of things have been changed. New building has been built, yes, and cars were like that, and then they were like that, and yeah. Or industrial territory. It's a concrete factory in the northeast Estonia. It looked like that before 1937, and for some good reasons it looked like casual like this and deserted and broken like 1992. So it tells a lot about the culture without saying a word. So how would you accuse this kind of artist who just shows two pictures together without saying a word? No, you can't. But people did read it as a book of history. And just outlook tells so much about culture and how the environment looks like, and you can characterize things like that. Here it's like nice postcard of painterly landscape, again northeast Estonia, and then you have this not very interesting casual place, and yeah, you compare them, you go from one picture to another picture, and you get the difference, and you can guess the processes that change things like that. Some people died also. It's the island Saaremaa, when we did 3 biennials. It's the west coast of Estonia, quite big island actually, and there was a person who was still alive then and faded away by that time. Okay, there was a man also who invaded Russian last year's territories, the military territories near Tallinn, 50 kilometers of Paldiski, where Russians kept 2 big nuclear submarines, actually, 100 megatons each, which is quite a dangerous thing. And the legend says that he, by himself, he never got into these spaces, but he bribed the Russian officers, like, $200, can you do this for me? Yeah, of course. It was a big money, $200. Oh, and he got those wonderful images of, yeah. But this is something he did by himself. It's a political murder of a priest who knew too much and who was about to make it public, what he knew. That's the thing. Well, some more training center for those nuclear submarine people. And this is the tower, of course, here as a, yeah. He acted very bravely. Now, we had, from our diaspora, Priit Vesilind was one of the editors of National Geographic for some time, 30 years to be more exact. He came to Estonia in the mid-70s, and he wanted to show the English-speaking world and the world in general how Soviet Estonia looks like in authentic meaning, with not describing it very much, but again, just showing. So you can see elements of, these are like, I don't know if anybody of you remembers these payphones like on the streets. Did you have them too? Yeah. Very ugly and dirty and broken always, and yeah. And you can guess what those are. Those are machines that produce sparkling water. You put a little coin and you get a glass of sparkling water with syrup or without. And this is a sign of quality in the Soviet Union. Now we speak about quality in education sometimes and art management, and then this was more general thing. So, whom you could meet on the street, it's also quite obvious. Militaries everywhere, and again this very specifically Soviet, broken, destructive environment. Street view, or cities that were covered with dust of concrete. That's the northeast Estonian town Kunda, where they produce cement, concrete, and the cleaning equipment was not there, and it all covered like ceramics, something, you know. You see apple trees, but they're gray. They're covered with concrete, and now imagine what it does to your lungs if you breathe that thing. Okay, that's the Siberian work, which I'm going to send necessarily the link, and you can see the stills. They tell you a bit. It's a photo film. I don't know, in English-speaking countries, usually it's called photographic essay, perhaps more, yeah? Like you have animated, like La Jetée, the old film by Chris Mucker, and this tradition. And yeah, it consists only of photographs. Now, let us come back to the borderlands and what happened after that. So isn't it nice design, like on the border, using negative and positive at the same time? Things change sharply, and the consciousness is like divided, like in the year of 1940s, and 90s again, the same, very sharply. It's not much common between them. So very nice visualizations. Now, okay, territories. That was my student, very first supervised student, Marko, who did a divided territories piece, which is based on how Estonia has been occupied by different bigger countries through all the history. So we used 3 tables, which are like, weddings, and we used this kind of, they were small, compact, and then you can do like that, and many more people can, join the party. And he did put the contract signing hands in between of those tables, and here you can see little curtains that hide or halfly hide maps. And the maps are subjectively drawn cartography of Sweden ruling Estonia, or Russia, or Denmark, or Poland. Okay, you have motif like that on the bigger banners, and you have the maps like that. It's always seen from the motherland, so to speak. It's Russia, how Estonia looks like as a not important place, like, coins or something in the border. And here it's 1621 is Sweden, of course, Scandinavian occupation, if you want, or domination, or colonial thing. Okay. Our own parliament, since the very beginning, they were more like people of ideas and everything, but still it was noticeable that how power affects badly to people, how people become greedy, how they want to earn huge salaries doing nothing at the same time, how they promised empty promises and all those things. So it's called state pie, consisting of exactly 101 as you have members in the parliament, you have each parliament member portrait here in the spoon, the liquid emulsion. And they are like trees growing on the soil-covered, mud-covered table. Like, oh, right, no words necessary. It's all, that's my own work, called Summer 1955 upper one, and Concealed Landscapes, which was work showing Soviet deserted rocket base on the low image. Here you have students who came through the military exercises in summer, and then they became officers the lieutenants. But here they don't know what to do with the gun. They got these huge DDT guns, quite big ones, and they were fooling around like, I don't know, Clint Eastwood or some comical figures, and you can see that looking at some of those persons, they couldn't even shoot, actually. They are just boyish yet, and too innocent. And some of them were like movie stars, you know. So gun is an instrument that opens a bit of human character. That was one thing. And the other thing was I wanted to show that those cadets were not able to fight really, but only to show up, and how different cultures like Estonian and Soviet get together in a weird way. And the other one was just a fantastic territory, I would say, full of electric plants and medical units and restaurants and storages in the middle of forest, just hidden landscape, concealed landscapes. Maybe here too, I've been thinking too much why people die so young today. I've had many friends who didn't get even 60, but just faded away. And some of them were argumented that, oh, well, he had cancer or heart attack or something like that. But why it's so big percentages? It must be something more serious in the living way or living style or pollute. I even don't know, polluted world. So I used those very little boxes with the LED lights inside. I took the little announcements. If somebody dies, we print usually in loving memory of, rest in peace, type of newspaper things, transparented them and installed them like, in a Boltanski-esque way maybe. And here you can see some examples, which is quite thinkable. I mean, quite morbid. It's one of the best composers we had, 50, and he was gone. He faded away. You have musicians, you have artists here, 26. Suicide? Yeah. Because of bad teachers in the Arts Academy, yes, unfortunately. You have journalists, and you have even people who were living and working in Australia. Peeter Linnap was a very, very good nature photographer, very successful. He only lived 50 years. And gradually I started to talk to my friends abroad in different countries and said, no, Peter, it's not specifically your problem. It's like all over the world that people very often die very early, which is not usual. And here you can have, one more composer, one more film director, actor, translator, and school director, and so forth. It's unbelievable. So I did a show that TV screens had this in animated way, like film is ending, and And I used candles in a cellar room, and it was all like very morbid. Some people couldn't stay there for longer. So, something more playful. Not everything is political necessarily, and that's my. He's a physicist and a doctor of physics man who does some art pieces sometimes, and he sometimes inserts into permanent displays things like that for the children, of course, or he does some more serious work. I mean, the museum shelves from the 1930s, obviously, and then inserting contemporary things into it. And now he asks the question, what happens after 50 or 500 more years? Does anybody understand or makes difference that these things don't belong to this, It's like archaeologists in Greece. They usually excavate and they might find findings from totally different periods and not knowing which is which, yeah? So after 50 years, we will see if somebody knows. Labeling, you always know what Snickers is and all this kind of, Coca-Cola and stuff. And here it's the signifier and signified have been changed in a playful way. Nothing serious. This work I like particularly very much. It's artist is playing a role of a little girl whose parents are mostly dead, and he finds the photo album and feels like complete injustice. Grandfather can't be on the photograph if he's dead, and he takes the face away, and because it's injustice, it's telling the lies. So we have done an outside work or public space work as well, It's one of the cinemas that was bombed in the middle of Tallinn. And the ruins were there for touristic view. So this artist inserted the films that were screened while this cinema was bombed in the 1944. Or she did also a piece of childhood memories, being in childcare, having this very small drawer, the space for clothes and a bag, and you could just peep into it. Or this is a nice work too. It's about looking conditions. You can't see anything except this pair of eyes, but you have to climb there, and then you look down. This kind of thing, actually, like here, but much higher. And what you saw was the comments of the work's name is a friend, that I don't want my friend to be different from what I expect from him or her, and so forth. So it's very personal too, in a way, and looking conditions. What children think about art. This artist was a art teacher in basic school, and she made children to write the sentences telling what they think about art. And very often art is about beauty, of course. Art must include a lot of craft side, and many more such kind of populist thing we usually know. The collection of the fake taxonomy, actually, the collection of flies and spiders and bees and stuff like that, and all installed like that, and then compared, like in the currency table. One bee is worth of 10 flies, for instance. Yeah, one spider is equal to, like, yeah. So it's both decorative, it's ironic, and many more. So, self-interpretations. How would we look to ourselves in different roles? So we had a group consisting of 5 young women artists, and they represented the role of, marriage, brides, and white trash, as they say in America, who excavates in the containers and hoping to find something. So you have both color is different, clothing is different, the body language is different. Okay, and the same goes as businesswomen, bureaucrats and kind of, yeah. In the airport, of course, again, the environment is different, the body language is different, the clothing is different, and as many things as possible, The mythologizing, I would say, stories of Bible. That was missing link in the life of divinity, it is called by Kaisa here, which is about Jesus. And Jesus is acted by my other student, Madis, who is like Jesus. So you all know that some years of his life are missing in Bible. So she represented it like that. Jesus was born and the star shined above Bethlehem. So the book tells us. Rich wise men came and brought presents for the newborn king. Very small black and white images. But what happened next? The book does not say. Isn't it important at all? The book does not describe the years of 12 to 30 of his life. It's, dark. Well, what else? Public space, which is used everywhere, I would say. And this young artist made a dialogue between, it says that it's prohibited to stick any advertising here. And he asks, so what? And puts another one. If you tear, do it properly. The poster says, and this is the context around it. It's like you're very savage saying, oh, Eurovision. Is that the location the Eurovision is best heard? It's a container of, trash and everything like that. So it's not a musical event, it's a political event necessarily, and very stupid songs actually. The water law was the only maybe I remember, otherwise kind of, terrible. Oh, we can't see that. That's a very sensible one. Yeah, it's the huge black and white analog laboratory, like this room, full of, not full of, but covered with water. And old photographs, floating around in this water, like in developing. And the audience could put rubber boots on and just walk through them and see how photographs are fading away. Because if you keep photographs in the water like for a week, they start to disappear. Yeah, it's a good question. Making photographs, we want to make them immortal in a way, or forever, and we don't pay attention that they gradually also bleached away and fade away. Childhood Ceiling, that's another autobiographical work of a young musician and photographer also. And my experience is the same when you're ill and when you're at Granny's place at the countryside. You just feel bored and you start to look at the little spots on the ceiling, for instance. And guess what it is? Oh, this remembers the kind of, sportsman. This remembers man with boat. This is a pissing dog, and this is, and so forth. So she collected all those things, brought them separately here: peeing boy, head, thief, cow, and so forth. It's a situation where you project, you have the dreams and wishes projected into what you see. Okay, this is the great work in a way of a blind man and a billboard that doesn't show anything. It's blank, it's empty. And here you can guess what is in his consciousness, and here you can also guess what might be hanging there. So it's a potential thing. But the other work is even more funny, I would say. Tavi, he graduated also years ago already. Was quite a nice artist. He took the pieces of literature, reference literature, how he calls them, and zoomed into the text, but to the extent that interpunctation, the commas and dots, started to be all similar. You can't make any difference if it is Thomas Kuhn or not, the science philosopher, or William Gibson, this cyberpunk movement, neuromancer, and it's all similar. The same, consisting of same things, losing identity up to certain time. Science fiction. Brothers Strogatskis, they did Stalker, I think, the Tarkovsky film, and finally SMS from the telephone, not television, of course. Right, what can we do with space in a central way was done by 3 young women artists who made a calendar as a coursework, actually. We had a stage photography coursework, and everybody had to present something like at least 10 images that are connected to each other somehow. And what they did was that they made a nice turn of the space. Everything they photographed from above to, like that, and then we are looking at the same images like 90 degrees of, transforming them. Yeah. Here. Sometimes illusory and sometimes like visual questions. Silent dialogues. It's about people who are affected by their friends and they are not encouraged enough to tell about that, and so you have those portraits with small texts like inner monologues, and yeah, this is one of my favorite works. We have had different students coming from other countries, not very many, but still we had a Croatian girl, Jelena, who learned Estonian language, which is so different, and graduated the school. And we have several people from Latvia because they don't have the photography department. So they come to us. So Diana is one of the most successful young artists coming from our school, and she did a portrait of her own family where she has herself, mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother. That's quite amazing. I mean, the great-grandmother was around 100 years old, of course, very, very soon. Not on this picture yet, but she still lived several years more, and yeah. Now what is uniting them is just a beam of light coming from the window. They're like, you know, rising from the darkness, and yeah. And the other work with this, on the same topic is just to photograph the backs and shoulders, and showing how the skin changes from the younger generation to older generation, how materially the age can be seen and visible. Typology of touch, it's called. Me, mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother. Yeah, it's like, you know, yeah, not much to say. Our version of Banksy, I would say, is here. It's Edwards, he's called. He doesn't want to be known. He doesn't want to be connected with our department at all. He told me, you can show my images, but you can't tell who I am. And, you know, it's typically Banksy-esque thing. So he took the most emblematic images from the 19th century, sometimes ethnographic photographs, combined them with Apple Mac computers and local area network and this kind of terms. It's LAN party. This is a piece from, yeah, it's like Once Upon a Time in the West type of films, but actually it's beloved book for children. It's called Spring, and here you have the nationally important writers who are all. It's written fired. Yeah, imagine you have James Joyce or somebody on the image, and it's called fired. They don't have work. It's a hint to economical situation. We have now the writers. 5 writers each year get a salary for 5 years. Then the other ones, and they change. It's now there, but we had a moment where culturally very important people were just like pushed out of the cultural of the economic circle. So they were like asocialized. Extreme right-wing asshole. Yeah, we have this party too, extreme right-wing, who claim to be very Estonian, but actually they are vice versa. Some yoga work. It's very much takes us back to the 1920s, like Kraft and Schönheit movement, probably in Germany. And we have a girl who is halfly Colombian and halfly Estonian, and she does the kind of very bush soul work, I would say, with people in the forest, deep forest, exhibiting the pictures in this environment. They are very often like not square format, but circle, ring, like that. And yeah, like before Christianity, I think we had a pantheist religion that the basic idea is that God is everywhere. It's not somewhere upstairs, but it's in everything, and every tree and flower. And the church is inside, not there as a building, but yeah, it's inside. A gallery exhibition. Well, in the year of 2014, I think, or even earlier, we studied an underwater photography course, just to make young people more physically, you know, active, and to propose this experience, which is completely different. So they went through the PADI aqualand courses, scuba diver courses. We bought some housings for the cameras and strobes, and went to the quarries and not so very deep and dangerous places, but you know. And some of them were invited to Italy, to Matera, in 2019, because they had cultural capital by that time. And they did a work under the water, like Italian Renaissance type of a composition with many people and closing and so forth. It's a lot of fun. It's not nothing serious really, because water is just an optical environment for photography, and who wants to see more colorful fish and corals, and it's you know, becoming very typical. That's how we do the courses, and some of the very easy and refreshing pictures, I would say. Okay, we take part in international festivals. One of them, very fruitful, is in Bratislava. It's a month of photography, like many of those. And Václav Macek, who is a curator of all things, has invited us to do work for them as well, that we have been doing. So this is Diana, young and successful. Now she said, I called her and she said, I've been burned out. I said, what? I invited her to some committee or some board, or, you know, and the doctor said that 6 months, no work at all. So sad and strange at the same time. All right. So this is my teacher, Thomas McEverly, in our school, and now he has the memorable auditorium where we keep the lectures, because he brought us to as far as Art in America. And there was a funny story. Art in America had editor, Betsy Baker, and Thomas went to her place and then said that I'm going to Estonia. And she replied like, you're going to Estonia? That's the chicest thing I've ever heard. That sentence I will remember forever. That's the chicest thing I've ever heard. It's okay. All right, that's one of the diploma work we had in Pallas, was Quarterly Photography magazine with ironic name Cheese. You know, cheesy, and yeah, in English it doesn't sound. And again, very serious work by Elisa Harpo, whose grandfather was a scholar and who was jailed, and who ended up with, yeah, just faded away. That's another psychologically important work of living together type of thing, you know. It's not, doesn't need much explanation, but yeah. Departure. It's departure? Oh, here. Oh, yeah, of course. My pillow, her pillow. Very easy. That's my crazy assistant and technician, Thomas, whom I met first time in the black and white analog lab, and who was taking a shower in the middle of the day. He said, very good equipment you have. I said, are you crazy? Oh, haven't you seen a naked person before? He replied. I said, yeah, of course, but if the students will come in, then what's then? So reluctantly he came out from there, and oh, stupid. I don't know. I can't say anything about this work. It's like a punctum work in Roland Barthes, the navel of tree, you know. You have like a little round thing here, and she stares at us, and God knows. God knows. It's my own work of After Monuments, it's called, where I climbed to Russian heroes, the basement of the monument, or how should I call this thing, yeah, kind of. And then I did like living sculptures, all kinds of Woody Allen-esque things maybe, and there were two Russian boys passed by and said, what are you laughing at, those Russian monuments? I said, well, this guy whose name is there never existed. And they replied, listen, this sucks completely, let's get away from here. And they went away to drink beer somewhere. I was so pissed. Okay, some landscapes. You saw that one already, I won't repeat. But also we have people who have a combined education. This girl is a geographer. She made maps in a professional company using satellite images and so forth. And then started to make photographs. Then she graduated from our department, started to make landscapes which are like in between of physical landscape, physical and the map, really. It's flat and yeah. Or the site-specific thing. It's photographed in the same place, where it's now installed. It's only black and white, huge, and yeah. The journey between Tallinn and Tartu, two biggest cities, 186 kilometers. It's like from here to, I don't know, how far is Belfast? 200 and something, yes, kilometers, something like that. Yeah, the same distance actually. So there was a student who came from Tallinn each day by car and started to photograph and to collect those dead corpses of rabbits and dogs and foxes and kind of, yeah. That's mostly synthetic and it looks great, but not very many references, of course, like a kind of bodyscape, yeah. Of course, done by Photoshop and so forth. This one is more interesting, I would say. Manscapes. Yeah, Manscapes is a combination of portrait and landscape work where every person depicted holds his favorite landscape. They were asked to select one from childhood or from a later period, and they're just showing it to the photographer. Yeah. Paul, tega mõni pilt must palun. Ja siis, yeah, his grandfather, friends, brother, all showing what they like as a landscape. And here as well. And at the same time they are, on the background of another landscape. Yeah, they are not in the studio. But, yeah. So another work in landscape course, silence please, it says. It's about regulations. We have, all these photo opportunities in the landscape, inserted those labels, and what we can't do, and so forth. So she took it so far that it becomes absurd. Silence, please. Danger of wolves. Be aware, wolves around. Danger of drowning. and so forth. Completely light and laughable. Then you can have landscapes on, pullovers and trousers and things like that. It says Pacific. It says River Island. And 7 seas. And there are many actually, if you start to look at half of them. Yeah, River Island. And Pacific again. Memories. 20 years of family tree meetings, which is actually pre-Photoshop work, and depicts of the same people actually from different periods. They had a tradition to, get together, like in many places in the world, like after 5 years maybe, and the photograph was made. So all those photographs from within, like, 15 years maybe, were combined to each other. So you can see one or the other person here and there, and the third time there. And so it's about truth and memory. This is a destructive work, actually, a film, short film, where it starts with a blank image and then all of a sudden, shot. And the black thing appears on the face until everybody is gone and it leaves with just one person. Short piece. And you are expecting already the next one and the next one. Start to be freaking out and yeah. Oh yeah, this work was called Register of Oblivion. Well, family work within, it's a very mixed story of a family, half of the members living in the United States, half of the members in Estonia, and some in other places, changing letters and so forth. This is another kind of work I can't really comment very well after hours. You open the eyes and you close the eyes and you have this magic thing. Now, be prepared to very sad work. It's about a little boy, Robin, his name, who knows that he's going to die next year. In advance, he knows. And the work itself looks like that. Here you have closed boxes, and here you originally have photographic paper. which is then developed. And as there is no safety light, it becomes gradually darker with in front of the viewer's eyes. It takes like a minute or a bit more. And with this light, I don't know if I can really give a good... Yeah, that's the first image. He's very small, yet he was 13 when he died. And his idea was that he's going to another place. He's not going to disappear, but he's just changing the place. It should be a little scene here, like halfly disappearance. And on the third image, it's totally black. It's gone. So each time she has to perform it newly in an opening, usually. That's why it's called performative. It uses the process of fading away, modeling it in a very nice and sensitive way. Yeah. Okay. That's one of our department leaders, Kaisa. She did a political work with his own son. I don't grow my son for war when the Ukrainian war started, because we always have that the men must be brave and they must fight, and we estimate them how good fighters they are. And now it's quite clear that it doesn't help you. It's just you are like meatballs for military industries, nothing else. You can be brave or whatever, and this glory is not worth of dying. World without women. It's again connected with Ukrainian war, of course, which we now are suffering directly or indirectly. From one hand, we have a lot of Russians coming and escaping from Russia, don't want to be the part of that, and Ukrainians too, as well. You know, probably it's a crazy world. Now add the Israeli thing, and I would be very happy if this doesn't lead to many more serious kind of total conflicts. Yeah, so I think I end with that. And if you have any questions, I would be trying to answer them. Yeah.